All right, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the press conference following the informal meeting of EU Defense Ministers meeting. The first speaker will be Mr. Raimonds Vējonis, Minister of Defense of Latvia. Then following him, Mr. Maciej Popowski, Deputy Secretary General of the European External Action Service. After him, the next speaker will be General Patrick de Rousiers, Chairman of the EU Military Committee, and finally also Mr. Jorge Domecq, Chief Executive of the European Defence Agency. Mr. Vējonis, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. We just finished our informal EU Defence Ministerial. We had very interesting and fruitful discussions, and really thanks for High Representative Mogherini and Secretary General of NATO, Mr. Stoltenberg, for participating in this event. We discussed on three main topics. First of all, we discussed about EU Defence Ministers' input to upcoming EU Council on Defence and Security in June. Secondly, we discuss about strategic communication and EU response to hybrid threats, and thirdly, EU rapid response capability. But now I will switch to Latvian language.
Ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned, we had three key topics in our agenda: upcoming European Council discussion on defense and security, then strategic communications and fight against hybrid threats, and finally we were speaking about the EU rapid response capability. The June European Council will serve a significant milestone for further development of the EU's common security and defence policy. Ministers agreed that the security strategy adopted in 2013 should be revised, and it was the key topic for our discussions. We agreed that we need the strategy that can respond to current threats and that takes into account future challenges. We agreed that the heads of states and governments in June will speak about the strategic challenges and will speak about the common European Union standpoint on this issue. One of the main challenges at the moment is hybrid warfare threats, and Russian aggression in Ukraine gives us a signal about how dangerous they are to our security. Therefore, we had a separate discussion about how to prevent hybrid threats and about the strategic communications. Strategic communications is especially important issue in Europe in general, because Russia is using our basic values like free press and free media, and so this is one of our vulnerabilities as well. Therefore, in June discussion, it is important to decide about the ways how to solve this particular type of threats. If we speak about the strategic communication, then it is critical in defense against hybrid threats, and we agreed that we need a comprehensive and united action of the member states to develop a common strategic communications plan in order to protect our citizens. I have to underline that our priority is the security of our people, both in domestic policy and also in foreign policy, and when designing our defense system. We had a very wide debate about the current EU's missions and operations. that can be assessed as positive at the moment. And then we discussed also issues related to the improvement of the EU's rapid response capability. We agreed that we need to ensure better ability to react so that the EU can quickly and adequately respond to any kind of threats, including hybrid threats. And it became clear that we have to strengthen our cooperation, namely between the EU and NATO, thus ensuring complementarity and mutual reinforcement in terms of security and defense in Europe. Thank you.
Mr. Popowski, please.
Thank you very much. Many thanks to the presidency and the minister personally for hosting us and also chairing part of the meeting. The meeting was quite important in the context of the preparations for the European Council discussion on security and defense in June. That will take place as planned. When the heads of state and government met in 2013, they sort of projected a narrative about Europe's role as a security provider, and in order for Europe to be able to act as a security provider, Europe needs capabilities and an industry to develop these capabilities. Now the context, the strategic context of the debate has changed since 2013, obviously. Hence, it's the strategic review that the High Representative Mogherini has announced and she's going to take forward is really important. We need to analyze the Europe strategic environment, and this is an ongoing process, and she will present some of her views at the European Council in June. I think all participants agree that we don't have a choice. We cannot simply prefer one crisis to another. We have to deal with challenges in the East and in the South together. Investment in defense remains important, and Commissioner Bieńkowska, who's in charge of internal market, including the industry, defense industry, was here yesterday. So we need to work on the consolidation of the market, invest more in research and development. These are also important deliverables for the European Council in June. So when the heads of state and government get together, their message will also constitute an important exercise in strategic communication. We have to come up with our own narrative to counter the negative propaganda, whether it's coming from the East or from the South, and everybody agreed that we need to do it in close cooperation with NATO, and NATO Secretary General was with us yesterday. Europe's operational engagement remains important, and demand is growing, but I will not go into that. You will hear more from General de Rousiers. But we were also looking beyond the ongoing operations, missions and operations at different trouble spots around the world. Ukraine, Libya, with the confirmed presence of Daesh ISIS there, and also Boko Haram operating not only in Nigeria but in the greater Sahel zone. There was a presentation by the commander of the Nordic battle group that is on standby, very detailed and very well received, because the ministers continue talking about the potential use of battle group in general. And the UN was present at the meeting as well. UN Under Secretary General Hervé Latsou, head of the Department for Peacekeeping Operations, which is a sign of a very close relation between the EU and the United Nations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Popowski. General de Rousiers, the floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I'll speak French. The international environment is indeed complicated, which is why we need to exchange information, share information, and support various organizations such as the United Nations or Organization for African Unity, which are involved in trying to resolve various crises. We talked about the various missions. I reported on current missions with some 3,000 soldiers involved, EU countries, as well as 8 partners from various countries, continents, and 5 operations which are upcoming. The EU is very determined in combating piracy. You're familiar with that, and is a constant operation. Secondly, stabilization of countries under tension, which is the case in Central African Republic and Bosnia-Herzegovina, where a large number of countries are involved. In Central African Republic, the EU4 Central African Republic is now finishing as a success, because we will be able to pass the baton on to the United Nations. We still need to transform the CAR. It's a transitional phase that we're in, because it's important to continue to help the Central African Republic and to continue to support the United Nations in refounding the armed forces of Central Africa. We have been training forces involved in internal conflicts and terrorism. I'm thinking of Mali and Somalia, which are 2 places in the world where the security situations are very different, of course, but there is a need to transform the armed forces of these countries. That's a long-term commitment. The EU is substantially committed to this. The ministers took note of what is being done, and they talked about how they might consider continuing these actions for supporting the 2 armed forces in question. It was also an opportunity to talk about potential crises and how the EU might react to them. There is this notion of sharing information that I mentioned already, and preparation. Tactical groups are one of the tools amongst many which the EU has to help countries in difficulty. And I'll now pass the floor on to the executive head of the Defense Agency.
Domecq, the floor is yours.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank Minister Vējonis and the Latvian presidency for organizing this important informal meeting with defense ministers. After not even 3 weeks into my tenure as Chief Executive of the European Defence Agency, the meeting provided an excellent opportunity for discussions. I am personally committed to further strengthening relations with all our member states. I will visit every capital in the coming weeks and months to gather first views and opinions, and I want our partners and stakeholders to reaffirm their priorities to better serve them. Under the authority of the High Representative, the European Defence Agency is designed to foster defence cooperation in Europe. That is our core business. The objective is to develop the necessary defence capabilities to increase interoperability and maximize savings in procurement. A second core mission of the agency is to promote defence industry in Europe. This is essential from a strategic point of view. A strong and competitive defence industry is essential for our capabilities. It is also essential from an economic point of view, of course, both in terms of employment and technical research. We also cooperate closely with the European Commission in areas of dual-use research and engage in the harmonization of military requirements in order to avoid the proliferation of variants. This will be even more important as we see the frontier between security and defense, between internal and external security, further blurred. The 2015 European Council addressing defense topics has been an important topic in our discussions these days. We should exploit the rendezvous to the full. Top-level guidance and direction in defense will be increasingly important in the months and years to come. EDA will provide an update of the progress made based on the tasks stemming from the 2013 European Council. we will seek further guidance to ensure that we fully implement them, identifying possible bottlenecks. However, the Council cannot only be a stock-taking exercise. Some areas of the agency is thinking already of putting forward in proposals and incentives for further defense cooperation, measures to support the industry, including security of supply, as well as new impulses for research and development. Based on our analysis of capability needs, we will also prepare proposals for new cooperative programs. At the European Council in June, we will seek heads of state and governments' firm commitment to the EU as a provider of security with the required capabilities and backed by a strong European defense industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Domecq. Now it's time for questions. Before asking, please name yourself and media you are representing. Please, the first.
Adrian Croft from Reuters. Can you tell us whether you discussed any new European Union mission for Libya, given indications that Islamic State has now got a foothold there? And secondly, we're hearing indications that France is not happy with the level of solidarity it's seeing from its European Union partners for combating various terrorist threats in Africa, such as Boko Haram and Islamic State. Would you agree that there is not sufficient European solidarity? Thanks.
Okay. Well, on the point about solidarity first, maybe I wouldn't put it that way. I mean, you can discuss it with the French minister, but the very specific point that was raised in very clear terms by the High Representative yesterday and echoed by the French minister was the EU contributions or member states' contributions to this follow-on mission in the Central African Republic, where we struggle to find those 60 personnel, advisors, to advise the Ministry of Defense and the Army of the Central African Republic. We are now at 25 and we should go up to 60. Shouldn't be too difficult in the whole of the European Union, but the appeal by the High Representative was very, very, very clear, and I hope that we will find a solution very quickly. Sorry, the first question. Oh, well, on the mission, no, there was no specific discussion on that, but you're aware that the discussions in New York are ongoing. There is a proposal for a Security Council resolution that has not been adopted yet. There are a few proposals and ideas. So for the time being, our focus is on the support to the political process and the talks between different factions brokered by UN Special Representative Bernardino Leon.
Maybe I can add a few elements on that topic of EU solidarity for the commitment in Africa. And just to break a few misleading ideas. Who are the three major nations contributing to EUTM Mali? Well, it's Spain, Germany, and Belgium. Who are the three leading contributing to EUTM Somalia? It's Italy, Spain, and Sweden. So European countries do get involved in areas where terrorist activity takes place, be it in northern Mali or be it Al-Shabaab throughout Somalia. And so this engagement takes place at a large extent. And that solidarity towards African countries is being done largely. You highlighted Boko Haram. Well, there, the External Action Service with the Crisis Management and Planning Directorate and with the EU military staff has deployed personnel to help advise the African Union in their preparation for the multinational joint task force. So there is activity that is taking place, and it is not in any way one single nation who is engaged. It is a whole variety of European nations who are engaged. And for Libya, I will not comment.
Thank you. That was the question.
Nicolas Gros-Viret de West France, B2, Brussels 2, English if you prefer. For Raimonds, Vējonis, what do you need, what do you expect in concrete results for the European Council? And could you confirm that the date of June was a moment in discussions and some countries want to postpone this date? I want also maybe Maciej Popowski could answer on the proposition of Poroshenko, the president of Ukraine, want to have a police mission of the European Union inside Ukraine to help to peacekeeping or to monitor borders. Or maybe last question for Patrick Rousiers, why it is so difficult to have just 60 advisors in Africa, in Central Africa? Why European Union couldn't provide just dozens of persons?
In reply to your question about the upcoming European Council, the date has not been postponed regarding security and defense issues. President Tusk has confirmed that in June the Council meeting will take place and we will discuss security issues. As I already mentioned, the ministers agreed that we need to review the European security strategy, which was adopted in 2012. We need to speak about cyber threats and about actions that have to be synchronized in the European Union. And of course, this is also a question about developing our capabilities in order to secure common security in the European Union. Thank you.
Any other questions are there?
I just need to answer this. No, on the just to complement what Minister said on the timing. Indeed, it was confirmed, and it was very well received by member states. And I don't think that any member state has requested any postponement. On the contrary, so everybody is reassured. We have a clear deadline, and that's we have to deliver by June. On your question about Ukraine, first of all, our priority is now to support the implementation of the Minsk agreement, and this is already ongoing. We are going to provide the OSCE with armored cars. We are providing the OSCE with satellite imagery and whatever they need. There are EU civilian advisors in Ukraine. I mean, the EU advisory mission, but working on more institution building, the reform of the Ministry of Interior and Police. We are aware of the Ukrainian idea or proposal, which was floated by the President, but we need to know more. We need some clarity. Any kind of EU engagement would have to be based on a clear mandate and discussed with the Member States. So anytime we know more, we'll go back to the member. The High Representative will analyze the proposal and then go to the Member States for a more thorough discussion.
UMAM, Central African Republic, what is it about? It's an advisory mission with non-operational training. That's rule of laws, way to behave in a group or as individuals. It's complicated. It's complicated because this means that you need to understand the culture of the country, the history of the country, that you need to be able to interact with other nations from the European Union. So it takes a little while just to make a decision. But what's the end date, or when do we need to have a decision done? We need to have a smooth transition between EU4 RCA and EUMAM RCA, which means we have until the 15th of March to make it happen. And we're getting there. I understand impatience from you, from some, but we are progressing in that direction. And they were initial announcements that were made during the meeting, and I leave this to the nations to make the announcement, that are positive. So we're getting there, like we did for for the other EUTM Somalia and the movement from Uganda to Mogadishu, which was challenging as well, and as we did for EUTM Mali. And I'll stop by just saying we now have two flagship activities, operational activities. That's Atalanta, which is very well known for its success in fight against piracy. And we have another one, which is EUTM Mali, where there is a very strong political buy-in by the Malian authorities and a very effective activity in training and in advisory. And training, we are implementing every 6 months a new type of activities on top of what we're currently doing. So I'm very confident that UMAM RCA will be launched on time and will, in 1 year, provide adequate advisory to the Central African Republic, and by this expressing EU solidarity towards Central African Republic, of course, but most importantly towards the United Nations and the operation that is there in Central African Republic.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now it's time for the next question.
Yes, hello, Ryan Savit-Parry from the Associated Press. Yesterday, the NATO Secretary General and Federica Mogherini accused pro-Russia separatists of threatening the Minsk agreement, the ceasefire. How does the EU, how will they react to the events currently happening in Ukraine? Federica Mogherini talked about appropriate measures against Russia. Could that mean more sanctions, or what else could we see?
Thank you. Of course, when speaking about Ukraine, we strongly believe that we have to take into account the Minsk II agreement and its conditionality, and all parties have to do what is expected of them under this agreement. And the EU has recently invited again both sides to comply with ceasefire requirements. They have to withdraw their troops, and they have to ensure peace in the area at the moment that are in the hands of rebels. If fights will continue and the Minsk II agreement is breached, then the EU can take a decision on further sanctions, appropriate sanctions. Thank you.
Thanks. Next question.
Anna Bartel, Latvian television. Once again about this security strategy. During the discussion there were certainly mentioned some exact things which are missing in there right now. Could you maybe name some of them?
Yes. Sharing. No.
Thank you. As I mentioned before, we are sure that we have to start discussions about the review of the strategy. And if we decide to do so, then we will revise the strategy, because we have to remember that the strategy was adopted when the security situation in Europe was absolutely different and when there were no threats present as we face today. The European security strategy did not envisage the possibility that any third country might use force, military force, to invade any other country like it was in Crimea. It was not expected that they can support rebels and separatist forces like what we see in Ukraine. And so this aspect should be re-evaluated. Thank you.
Just very briefly, indeed an update is needed after 11 years, and there are certain threats that have evolved. cybersecurity is mentioned in the original strategy, but the cyber threats have evolved over the 11 years. The use of social media as a means of psychological war was not known because they didn't exist in 2003. So the High Representative really wants first to map out the strategic environment, to understand what has changed, present her ideas, and then start a very broad process of consulting, looking at security and foreign policy challenges. So not only security and defense, but security and foreign policy. That's her intention.
Thank you. Any other question?
Sorry, Ryan Savipari from the Associated Press again. Sorry to ask another question, but the UK Defence Secretary has been quoted today as saying there's a real and present danger of Russia trying to destabilize the Baltic states, and there's a real and present danger that Vladimir Putin may repeat another Ukraine scenario in the Baltic states. These are quite strong comments. How would you react to those?
Thank you. I can say that me being the Minister of Defense of the Republic of Latvia, I have said that at the moment we do not see such threats in Latvia, and the probability of these threats is very low. But it's clear that the political figures in Russia, they are quite unpredictable, and we have to be ready to react on different scenarios. So you quoted the Defense Secretary, but we have not received the confirmation from him personally that he has really said these words that were quoted. But it's clear that NATO countries and the EU member states are aware of the role of Russia in destabilizing the security situation in Europe, and we are aware that Russia might use both conventional measures as well as the elements of hybrid warfare. Therefore, every member state and NATO countries have to reassess internal security procedures in order to be able to react on different possible scenarios. And I can reaffirm that the EU and NATO will not be surprised if Russia intends to initiate anything like that. We are ready, and we will be ready to react. Thank you.
Last question, if there is any.
Just last but not least, on battle group, we say often that, and it's not me, some ministers say, we have to use it or lose it. What is a ground, what is a country where we could use it now? Maybe at in Chad or at the south of Niger?
We had very hard discussions on this topic, and everybody agree that we must decide in Europe how we will use EU battle groups. It must be such a decision. If we decide that we have a future of EU battle groups, it will be the places where could be involved, but anyway we need political will, we need financial and military support from all EU countries, because it's not decision alone by one country. It's common decision how we will use EU battle groups.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. The conference is over.